The Unmarked by Matt Fleagle, Chapter 21, The Terrible News. Leek bounded from tree to tree, always several yards ahead of Kaleb. Meanwhile, Kaleb swatted large branches aside and contorted his way through the knotted twigs strewn across their path. They were now about a half hour outside Terrashine. The woods were just beginning to thin out. "Where do you get your energy, Leek?" Kaleb muttered. "According to Dellblood legends, you are hundreds of years old. Don't animals slow down with age, too?" "I don't think of myself as old," chattered the bando. He backtracked to Kaleb and dangled upside down from a limb just above Kaleb's sweaty head. "As far as I remember, I've always been me, and I'm quite happy with who I am." Kaleb wiped his forehead. "Tell me, what was it like, Leek?" "What?" "Becoming a dragon. Having the power to crush 2-ton stones between your hands, or talons, whatever it was you had." Said the bando, swaying back and forth beneath the limb. "It's a bit hard to remember. There's something about the warden's magic fogs up my memory." "That's too bad," said Kaleb. "I didn't much like it, if that's what you mean. I can tell you that for certain." "Why not?" Kaleb said. "You could fly. You were stronger than anyone. You could do things no other human or animal could. Wouldn't you like to have that power back again?" The creature scratched his little head with a furry orange paw. "Why should I need to do something no one else can?" he said. "And who else would I want to be but myself?" "Well, because I don't know exactly," said Kaleb. "It's just that for a little while everyone looked at you with awe and terror. When you spread your wings out and screamed in your dragon voice, everyone listened." Leek suddenly looked troubled. He swung back up and perched himself on the sturdy branch. "I shouldn't like to frighten anyone," the creature said, his voice hushed. "At least not without a very good reason." "You're probably right," Kaleb said, frowning. "I just think that I'd relish the chance to make my enemies shiver in their boots, to get everyone to look at me with something like respect in their eyes." The bando shrugged. "I think you're perfect the way the Forest Spirit made you, Kaleb. Besides, who should want to be something other than what the Forest Spirit made him to be? How should we know what kind of arms or legs or voices we were meant to have?" "I never thought of that." "How else could any creature be happy?" Leek continued. "How else could we find joy in anything unless we first accepted everything for what it was? I can see beauty in everything he makes, just the way he makes it, whether animals or fruits, flowers or trees. Valwrinkle always says the Forest Spirit is happiest when his creatures find happiness in what he made." "I guess you're right," said Kaleb. "It was only a thought." He picked up his tired legs and began walking again. Leek sprang toward another branch farther ahead, once again assuming the lead. A few steps later, Kaleb stopped when the rustling of Leek in the trees stopped. Leek was frozen like a furry twig fixed to the branch beneath him. The bando's whiskered nose twitched rapidly. "What is it, Leek?" "Not too sure," said the bando. "Something's approaching, but not by ground. It's above us. I think it's circling." "But what?" Kaleb began. Leek let out a loud squeal suddenly and scrambled down the tree trunk. Standing at Kaleb's knees, the bando pointed his little paw upwards. "Look who's here," he babbled. "Oh, I didn't expect to see them so soon, Kaleb." Kaleb squinted into the sunlight above him. 2 large gray owls were coasting downward through the upper tree branches. They landed on a thick limb just above him. There the owls sat side by side, swiveling their heads to survey the surroundings. "It's rather dark down here, isn't it?" said the first owl after settling its feathery wings. "Yes, it is," said the other. "I just can't get used to daylight missions. Makes me want a long nap. But take heart, love. In a few hours the moon will be out." Leek clapped his hands feverishly. "What brings you here, Seliwan, Teloish? I'm very pleased to see you. My goodness, where are my manners? Kaleb, you may remember my 2 feathered friends from your visit to the Animal Council. The lovely female on the left is Seliwan, and that's her mate, Teloish." Kaleb found it difficult to tell which was which. and was not confident he would remember the owls' names. but he nodded and offered them a half-bow. "Why have you met us all the way out here?" said Leek. "I always appreciate your company, but isn't it far too early for you to be up and about?" Tellerwish cleared his throat with a squawking noise and said, "Fallwrinkle woke us and gave us instructions to seek you out in these woods." "What for?" said Kaleb. "You should be warned we're heading into hostile territory. Where we are going, the people will not understand your kind." "Oh, dearie, you needn't worry about us," said Selawon. "You land-bound creatures always forget the wonderful convenience of having wings. We can escape an enemy's clutches and their weapons faster than you humans can." "I didn't think of that," said Kaleb. "Still, why did Fallwrinkle send you?" Tellerwish squawked heartily. Kaleb guessed he was laughing. "To be your eyes and ears, of course. Don't you know that we owls can see and hear better than all the creatures in Terrashine? Our sight sharpens all the more at night." "That is true," said Leek. "We always forget this fact since the owls are usually sleeping when the rest of us are going about our business." "Though on that subject," interjected Selawon, "I feel it is my duty to tell you that someone is approaching from the west and a little bit north." "What?" said Kaleb, reaching for his axe. "Where is he?" "Not far, about 100 yards behind you." Kaleb said to Leek, "Do you think the Stone Runners could have made it this far already? I expect they'll be traveling in large numbers." Leek shrugged. "If it's any help, I can tell you it's only one human," Tellerwish said. "At least I believe it's a human. You can tell by the noisy footsteps." At this he winked at one of his large eyes at Selawon. Kaleb slid his axe back into his belt and looked up at the trees. "Leek, get as high as you can in the trees. It's time for us to borrow a Stonerender strategy for getting the jump on an enemy." With that, Kaleb leapt up and grabbed the first large branch above him. Somewhat clumsily, he hoisted himself up by several strong limbs until he was perched securely about 15 feet off the ground. The owls opened their wings and ascended into the trees. They alighted next to Leek, a few limbs above Kaleb. The whole company held their breaths and listened carefully. Whoever was approaching had difficulty navigating the dense woods. Tellerwish was right. The approaching steps were loud and came at irregular intervals as though the person were fighting with the thick brush. They even heard a crash at one point, followed by a grunt as though the pursuer had tripped on a branch and fallen to the forest floor. Soon the person came into view, about 40 yards to their west. Kaleb could now see that it was a woman. She grumbled under her breath as she wiped dirt and dried leaves from her elbows. Kaleb eased down from his branch to the one just beneath him, and then lowered himself to the ground. "What are you doing?" squeaked out Leek in a hushed voice. "She'll see you." Kaleb straightened up. A smile broke over his face at the sight of the woman breaking through a patch of thick brush. At first, the woman stared at Kaleb in surprise. Then, a warm look of recognition passed into her eyes. "Well, if it isn't my fellow outcast." "In the flesh," he replied. The woman picked a pine needle off her wrinkled forearm. "I apologize for my appearance. After bumping around out here the last few days, I'm now wearing half the forest on my clothes." "How are you, Amber?" Kaleb said. "I can't complain," she said, "though I didn't expect to run into you so close to Glenward." Assuming it was now safe, the owls and Bando descended from the tree limb. Amber looked up at them in surprise. Then she turned to Kaleb with a question on her face. They're friends, Amber. You don't need to be afraid. The winged creatures are Selawon and Tellerwish." The owls gracefully bowed their stiff necks. "And the little one is Leek, my guide through these woods." "And why are you venturing into Dellblood land?" said Amber. "I thought you were regarded as a traitor by the elders." "Likely as not, they'll receive me that way the moment I step into their village," said Kaleb. "But I have to return, or the Dellbloods won't survive long enough to settle their minds about what I've done. Right now, Leek and I are on our way to warn the people of an imminent Stonerender attack." "So, Verliston did make her move." Kaleb nodded. "Which reminds me, why are you out here? I thought you had decided to keep your distance from the Dellbloods, too." "That is true," she said. I had no intention of stepping a foot into these woods again. She sighed. But I was to meet Phelan this morning. He never came. In all our years he had never missed a meeting, nor been late for one by more than a half hour. Kaleb swallowed hard. She didn't know. I had heard there was an old prophet in these woods, Amber continued. And when I grew desperate to find out what had happened to him, I ventured out of my little hovel and came here. I'm hoping the forest spirit can lead me to this prophet, or anyone who can tell me of his whereabouts. Kaleb shuddered a little, and the mad dash to get his friends away from Ablerin. He had failed to send word to Amber of her lover's death. The young man stood silently for some time. "What is it, Kaleb?" she asked. I parted with your husband in Ablerin. He gave his life there. Valiantly, in battle with Verlisten's men, he bought my friends enough time to escape. A stony look came into Amber's eyes. And my daughter. Safe. He got her out too, said Kaleb. Amber's face paled. Her eyes filled with tears, but she seemed resolute not to blubber in front of them. After painfully clearing her throat, she said, I had thought as much, but I wanted to know for certain. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner, Kaleb said. After some silence, Amber said, Don't grieve for me, Kaleb. Surely an unmarked Dellblood can understand what it means to live without love. Kaleb said nothing. We know how to survive without love, we unmarked ones, she continued. It's pounded into us from our earliest days. So when the forest spirit sees fit to give and take back a true love from us, here she paused again for a moment, we have to trust that the memory of that one love could somehow sustain us for a lifetime. Phelan will be with me forever. Kaleb ran his hand across his wet eyes. The owls bowed their wide, feathered heads in a reverent posture. Even Leek, bouncy as he usually was, slid down the tree trunk and onto the ground. He stood somberly near Kaleb's feet. After a while, Teloish lifted his white, broad face toward Amber and cleared his shrill voice. Woman, we animals know little about how humans suffer, but your words have moved us. You must understand. We also have watched our fellow creatures die at the hands of cruel humans. The warden tells us that the forest spirit made the creatures of Parison for each other, humans and beasts. Long ago, humans shattered that order, but I expect that when a human heart hurts, it is the duty of us animals to remind you that you are not alone in your pain. What he's getting at, said Selawon, chiming in, is that you are welcome to live with us, among the beasts in Terrashine if you no longer have a home or a mate to care for you. I don't mean to speak for Fallwrinkle. I think he's the prophet you spoke of. But I have no doubt you could make a home behind our walls. No one will harm you there. Listening to the owls talk, Amber's face grew wet again. Thank you, feathered friends, she said, when Selawon finished speaking. You are very kind. Perhaps someday I will take up a home in this land you describe. But for now, she turned with a resolute look on her face toward Kaleb, I want to join you in your mission to save Glenwood Village. Kaleb shook his head violently. Do not refuse me, she said in a flinty voice. I may be a poor outcast of the Dellbloods, and I certainly cannot fight off any scouts, but I am as old as the village elders, and the Dellbloods will listen to me, if only out of curiosity at finding out I'm still alive. If my husband gave his life for this mission, I would regret not doing whatever I could to finish what he started. The Stonerender forces are moving on this forest as we speak, Kaleb replied. If you come with us, I cannot guarantee that you will not see bloodshed before this very night ends. If my daughter is alive, as you say, then she is no doubt headed toward Glenwood Village as well. Kaleb nodded slowly. Well then, on to Glenwood Village. If I can see Madge once more before I die at the edge of a Stonerender's sword, then like my brave husband, I will leave this world content. Kaleb exhaled loudly. Well, Leek, he said, turning to the bando, Lead on to Glenwood Village. You owls, circle above us as we go. If anyone else approaches, drop us a fair warning, will you?" "Certainly," said Selawon. She and Telowish were off with a rapid sweep of their white wings. Bleak bounded away ahead of them. Kaleb reached over and took Amber's right hand in his. "I guess it's time for us exiles to go back home." With a smile, she squeezed Kaleb's hand back, and the two of them followed Leek into the dense forest to the east.